now. Uh, okay, but I
I
don't know.
think I actually had OBS left open from last time on this computer, and I suspect that I've screwed something up because of that. You're streaming, you're trying to stream.
Yeah, and it said the stream was interrupted when I started streaming into it. So, oh, I think there's sound.
Okay, sound is back. Cool. Thank you, Tim, for covering my ass. I had something wrong in my configuration, clearly. Just a quick recap for those that are on the web. Yeah, the hardest part of the job. DevNet 9, we did have a spec release for Deneb on the consensus layer. There was a couple of tests that were broken. Those have been released as a hotfix to the consensus spec test repo that have not changed anything in the consensus specs repo with respect to release. Hopefully people have taken a look. I will now pass it off to those coordinating DevNet 9. What's our intended timeline? I guess with comments from client teams on whether they're looking ready or not.
Yeah, I think we'd ideally like to have DevNet 9 some point next week, but two things we want to wait for are first a signal from the client teams as to how ready they are, and then where the hype tests are, because we'd like to get hype tests in before we do DevNets.
I can start with the hype tests. They are ready and running right now for DevNet 9. So yeah, they were updated last night.
Thanks, Mario. Any client teams that would not be ready for DevNet 9, which, Perry, would that mean a DevNet release tomorrow or Monday? What would the requisite timeline be for that?
We can just do it mid next week, so Wednesday.
But in terms of when you need client releases.
We normally just do forks off of branches. Sorry, we just
Branches,
use the
gotcha.
branches from clients, so we don't need releases for DevNets.
Gotcha. Very cool. Is any consensus layer team not ready for such a timeline? Okay, and any execution layer teams that are here, is anyone opposed to that timeline? Okay, Mario says Geth needs blob fee merge. Is that something likely in the next couple of days?
Yes. So I think we can be ready by next Wednesday.
Okay, cool. Perry and Co, y'all can circle with the rest of the teams and make sure that we're in a good spot. Justin.
So for ELs, I'm actually literally just running those hype tests right now, and we're running into some issues. So it depends on what the definition of next week is, I think. So put us down as ambivalent.
The week after this one.
What was that, Marius?
I said the week after this one. That's the definition of next week. So we are trolling.
Right. It's a difference.
Yeah, thank you, Marius. Yeah, so it is that intended Wednesday, but Perry and Co can circle back with y'all and see how things are going at the start of the week.
Yeah, and if not, we can still start the DevNet as long as we have at least a couple of plans ready, and then we can add the rest post fact.
Just want to add something from Teku. So we are still working on blocks v3 APIs. So we are ready if we don't consider potential interop between clients using these new endpoints for block production. If it's not intended, we are ready because we have the churn, the new churn PR just ready to be merged. So next week will be fine.
Let's go ahead and touch that. Paul brought up this. This is is PR 358 in the Beacon APIs repo. Looks like there's a change to the block v3, which is used for block production between the validator client and the Beacon node. This does seem like a pretty transparent, or the network isn't going to really be aware of this unless we try to do mix and match things. So I would lean in favor of what Enrico just suggested, which is to not be concerned about the granularity of whether clients made this change or not. But I'm open to alternative opinions. Okay, does anybody see this API change as a blocker for moving forward on DevNet 9?
Yeah, but to be clear, we are still working on the previous PR, which is not the consensus value, but block v3. This has been already merged. So it's not talking about this additional change, but the v3 endpoint completely.
Right. But we're good to move forward. Okay, I see some thumbs up. Thank you. Anything else on DevNet 9?
I had one tiny request to the Beacon API stuff. This PR got merged, adding blob sidecar event. Sam and Andrew are looking to add, track that event in Satu, and it would be nice if clients have support for this PR sooner rather than later. So that we can also start testing tooling such that by the time we do the first testnet, we're not testing something that's alpha.
Got any comments regarding the readiness of this? Okay. Anything else on DevNet 9?
Yeah, do we
Okay.
want to, I guess there's a question in the chat, do we want to do the contract deployment the same way we do on mainnet? Even if it's not with the perfect address, I think we have mined one suboptimal one, and we're trying to look for a nicer one.
I would prefer to see that, yes.
Yeah.
Light client, are we ready to do that deployment method? Okay, who's going to be in charge of that deployment method? And it also implies that we need enough lead time between Genesis and the fork to be able to fund the account, run the script. I mean, obviously that can happen extremely quickly, but we just need to be on it.
Yeah, we can definitely add some lead time, like 20 epochs or something, so roughly 2 hours. If someone shows me what the deployment method is, we're happy to do it, but otherwise we're also happy to just pass on the ETH and someone else does it. Whatever works best.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be great if like Klein or Martin could work with the DevOps team to show them how to do it so that we can get it scripted and kind of integrated into the processes. Okay, and then there's a conversation going on in the chat around the updated KZG values. Carl says, looking like we're aiming for Tuesday on those updated values. Is that something that we're attempting to get into this DevNet, or will we push it to a side test for now? subsequent DevNet or side test.
Yes, as mentioned, I'm hoping to have that done by Tuesday, but no guarantees. The issue here being that after that it needs to be compiled into the libraries. So that makes timing very tight for a Wednesday DevNet.
We've been putting out the alert that clients should allow it to specify as a runtime flag on almost every single DevNet spec release. I think all the clients do have such a flag though. We've even been using it. Or is the worry that the flag is not respected, in which case we can just get rid of it?
I think the worry is that there's some final work to do, and it's unclear if that would happen before Wednesday with respect to getting this into the cryptographic libraries. Or are you saying, Perry, that the cryptographic libraries have flags?
And I'm talking about the final client releases. Yeah. Yeah, cool. Then if it's ready in time, then we'll use it. But otherwise, I guess we stick to the old trusted setup for now.
The untrusted setup. Mario?
Yeah, so one small consideration that might be taken into account is that we do need to update the tests for that. So if you guys want to use the trusted setup for DevNet 9, I think that will be fine. We just need to consider that the hype tests and the actual DevNet 9 trusted setup might differ. So yeah, there's going to be a difference, but I don't think it should be impactful.
Martin?
Right. Hi. Sorry. So I missed a little bit of the context of what we talked about previously. But we're talking about deploying 4788. Right?
You sound very muffled, Martin. Is there maybe an angle you could change?
Is it possibly better now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I missed a bit of the context to the deployment of 4788 in DevNet 9. But the one thing that is important, I mean, exactly what code gets deployed by DevOps in the Genesis doesn't really matter. They can decide what they want to deploy, and all the clients will just use it. What is important is where they deploy it, and all the clients needs to agree on what address they're going to use for this system contract.
There was an intention to not deploy at Genesis and to instead deploy between the interim between Genesis and the Cancun fork.
So I went. Sorry, I'm missing a bit. But we're talking about a testnet, or we're talking about a mainnet fork.
We're talking about a testnet. I think there's just at least I have the desire to see just us run through that manual process and kind of get scripts and things together rather than just shoving it into the Genesis state, unless you believe otherwise.
No, that's fine. But the big problem then is not making the transaction and putting funds there and deploying it. That's not the big one. The big one is that we need to make sure that all the clients have the correct address anyway, regardless of how we put it there. Because it takes longer for everyone to put the right address and make a release. So Matt.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
If you have figured out the address, then put it somewhere publicly so all the client devs can just merge it, the correct address.
I think it's in the right address is in the exec spec tests version 4. Like there was a release of that test suite recently with an updated address.
Very good. Then all the client devs should now know that they need to update this as soon as possible.
Cool. Should be good to go. Mario.
So the
I
But
believe
is
you cut out, Mario. Yeah, okay,
uh,
you're back. Can you start over?
yeah, of course. So the address in the latest release of the XXX test is the one that is on the latest commit in the EIP. But it's not the one that is being mined right now, so there might be a change.
Got it. All right, I think we're on the same page on this. Any other DevNet 9 related items? Okay. Any other Deneb or Cancun related items? Tim,
Okay, not that we need to make a decision about this now, but I think it's worth it, assuming DevNet 9 goes well, to think about how we want to approach testnet deployment. And I guess there's a few considerations there. The first is obviously Holsky. The launch didn't go quite smoothly, so we probably don't want to use that as a first testnet. And then second, whether we want to have a first testnet before DevConnect or not, because given DevConnect is in mid-November, this means that we'd probably want to have that testnet early November at the latest, and if we want to have the releases out, that's around like mid-October or maybe late October, which is probably a month or less from now. So yeah, I'm curious if anyone has thoughts about that, like how realistic that is. And I guess also it's worth noting, I think the implication, if we don't do a testnet before DevConnect, it's probably unlikely we can do mainnet before the Christmas holidays, because after DevConnect, there's US Thanksgiving, and then there's basically 3, maybe 4 weeks before Christmas holidays and people being gone. So that's probably not the best time to fork mainnet. Yeah, so just wanted to put that out there. Curious
on
if
your first point in relation to Holsky, is it unlikely that we would be able to use Holsky in a few weeks?
I'm not sure. Maybe someone from who's more involved there
Yeah.
can. Yeah.
I think so the Holsky Genesis is scheduled now for next week, so the 28th. So it will be usable in time for DevConnect, but I'd still make the case for Holsky not being the first fork, but rather potentially the second or third. Mainly because we have Gurley as a perfectly functioning testnet that is deprecated, which means we can try out the 3.6 blob option on Gurley, and if it goes badly, it's a deprecated testnet anyway. If it goes badly on Holsky, then we have to figure out how to save it.
Yeah, I would also, and also like if there's something that goes wrong with the Holsky deployment the second time, I think it's good to have like a bit of buffer where we can, if we go for Gordy, we don't have any other variable to control. We could also choose to do Sepolia first. Sepolia has a smaller validator set, so it might be a bit more easy to coordinate the upgrade. But yeah, either Sepolia or Gordy at least are stable, and we can just think about deploying the fork rather than the stability of the network.
Yeah, the Gorley first argument given the deprecation, it seems like a sound argument to me.
Yeah, I think we can get more insight from 360 3-6 blobs if we do that one first. Otherwise, Polia is so small that you might not get enough information.
Yeah, and we agreed as well a couple calls ago to not, like, if 3-6 is bad, just leave it as is on one test net and, shift the value for other test nets. So in that case,
Yeah.
I'd also lean towards Gourley being the one that's like not up to mainnet spec if there's a change to be made. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, considering that is doomed to be deprecated, we'll go away with 3-6.
Yeah, so Tim's second point was with respect to timelines and whether a first test net is in the cards to be forked prior to Dev Connect, call it, first week of November or so. Is there a reaction to that type of timeline intended one way or the other?
On the Lighthouse side, I think we can make that timeline. I'm keen to start testing on like bigger test nets because it is like the networking component would be like the most like at this point an unknown that could require more work. So I think it'd be good to get more information about that more quickly. And then just on our development side, we're in the process of getting the Deneb work merged into our unstable branch. And I think that's probably the blocker for us in terms of getting it into one of the bigger dev nets. But we should definitely have it in by Dev Connect. So
Marius in chat says LFG. Any other reactions to the timeline?
I think another mind is okay with this timeline.
Harry, are we intending to do some mainnet shadow forks as we move into the testnet progression? Because that also, depending on how we scale up nodes and stuff, could give us some interesting data.
Yeah, we can plan for that. I think the main issue is that the nodes we rent for mainnet shadow forks tend to be quite well provisioned, which means like the blobs won't really stress them. I'm loosely in favor of having smaller nodes, but a larger network, like more physical nodes in the network, so that we can test more peer-to-peer related timing issues, etc. That might teach us more. But if there's more appetite for mainnet shadow forks, I can do that first, whichever's preferred.
Yeah, I mean, mainnet shadow forks, but in the direction of slightly lower resource and more nodes, or other types of tests that have more nodes, I think is going to push us in the direction of a mesh that's interesting.
Yep, once we have DevNet 9 up and running, we can look to start doing that kind of tests. I would guess that's what we would spend most of October on.
Awesome. Any other comments or reactions to timelines or anything Tim brought up? Okay. Other Dane Coon related items. Okay. Let's see. Enrico put up a link to it's an issue or PR about some discussion in relation to adjusting the attestation timing window. Enrico, can you give us some context here?
Yeah, I was more focused on not the specific new attributes that has been actively discussing the PR. Is more on the configuration changes that we recently had. Let's say starting from the networking configuration that at some point they become configuration. This triggers some interoperability issues, especially sometimes with the light client. With Lighthouse, sorry. This was because at some point the validator client that's used Beacon node, so remote validator client loads the configuration from the Beacon node. And if you don't have upgraded your Beacon node with the new value, the VC will not start because the new version expects these parameters to be there. And so what we did recently, very recently, at least on the Teco side, on the VC side, we try to start from a known configuration and known preset, and then apply the attributes, the parameters coming from the Beacon node endpoint, which means that if the Beacon node is still on old configuration, the VC side still get all the parameters that expects. So it should fix everything that happened in the past, but I don't know if the other clients, what are the logic on the other clients when they start VC getting configuration from the Beacon node. So I think on the Teco side, we should in a better position to try to avoid those configuration changes and breaking changes.
Okay, so we're saying if the VC is out of sync with configuration changes of the beacon node, we can sometimes have failures.
Yeah,
And
so
there might be a
normally,
better practice to pull down configuration values from the beacon node instead of strictly only respecting what's local to the VC, or am I missing something?
yeah, so previously we were applying only the preset and then all the configuration from the beacon node. So this opens the door of having a beacon node not providing everything that the VC expect, and force the operators to upgrade the beacon node first and then the validator client first after. And then if you are also have a mix of VC from one client and the BN from another client, you have to make sure that the other client has updated the configuration first. So it happened recently. So Teku now applies also the configuration from the VC perspective. So ignoring, well, yeah, getting the updated information that the validator client has locally. So even if the beacon node is slightly older, it can still get all the configuration.
I see. Do clients have reactions to this strategy that Teku's using?
I'd have to look into what Lighthouse does in this scenario, but I thought we just like loaded configuration in both the validator and the beacon, and we would just log if they don't match in the like based on the HTTP request. But I don't remember what we do if there's a mismatch.
Yeah, no, we do some warning when we can ignore something that is not mandatory. But now we actually default to a known value and then override if beacon provides the information. Seems like a nice strategy. So it could, if all the clients applies this and there is no drawbacks, it could be reduce the interoperability issues when new config arrives.
Right. So you're taking the strategy of beacon node config trumps the VC config in the event that that doesn't break anything. Okay. Enrico, is there, maybe we should elevate this to maybe an issue in the beacon APIs for further discussion rather than embedded in this instance of specs issue?
Yeah, it could be a nice place where we could start discussion there. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you mind just writing up a quick version of this there? Okay. Any other perspective or comments on this? Otherwise, we're going to take it into the Beacon APIs repo. Okay. Are there any other items that weren't on the agenda that people like to discuss today? Okay, then. Quick and easy. That usually means that the hard work is not on the call, it's happening in the plants. Cool. So let's keep things moving forward for DevNet 9 next week, and otherwise talk to y'all soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.